Hearing the first two verdicts in this case, Ahmaud Arbery hate crimes trial, Travis McMichael and Greg McMichael having been found guilty of hate crimes in this case. They're still reading through the charges, and I'm going to continue to listen, but that is Travis McMichael, Greg McMichael have been found guilty of hate crimes against Ahmaud Arbery. That they deprived him of his use of a public street because of his race. I'm going to listen for count two. That is against William Roddy Bryan, but again, two guilty verdicts in this hate crimes trial so far. I'm going to stand by. A guilty verdict for William Roddy Bryan as well. So the primary charges in this case carrying a life sentence, hate crimes against charges against Ahmaud Arbery, against Travis McMichael, Greg McMichael, William Roddy Bryan, all guilty of hate crimes according to this unanimous verdict by this jury after fewer than 4 hours of deliberations, reaching a conclusion in this case that has So on the charge of kidnapping, that's the third count. All three have been found guilty as well, and I'm continuing to listen to court. Count four is a firearms charge. Travis McMichael has been found guilty of that fourth count of the firearms charge. That is a brandishing and discharging a firearm in the commission of a violent crime. They're continuing to read, and now we're on count five. This is the Greg McMichael firearms charge. So guilty on all five counts. We now have a verdict in this hate crimes trial against three men who've been accused since almost right after they were indicted in the state case for murder, have now been convicted of hate crimes in this federal case. Travis McMichael, Greg McMichael, William Roddy Bryan, all convicted of depriving Ahmaud Arbery of his civil rights because of his race. This case, again, all about the race of the victim, Ahmaud Arbery, 24-year-old, who was running through their Satilla Shores neighborhood almost 2 years to the day, February 23rd, 2020. They chased Ahmaud Arbery. They ultimately murdered Ahmaud Arbery, as a state court found earlier late last year. So the murder trial was at the state level. This was the federal hate crimes trial of these three men, and today they have been found guilty, convicted by a jury, unanimously. 12 jurors found that they did in fact deprive Ahmaud Arbery of his civil rights because he was a black man. So this case has been obviously a big part of life in Brunswick here now for 2 years. We expect the family of Ahmaud Arbery will be coming out shortly and speaking, and when that happens, we'll obviously turn it over to the podium here behind me. It'll probably take a minute or two to wrap up what's happening in court. A very formal setting up there. They typically don't just open the doors and let people out, so it'll probably a few minutes of delay. But again, we have a verdict in this hate crimes trial here in Brunswick, Georgia. Three men accused of hate crimes against a 24-year-old black man who was killed in their neighborhood by them 2 years ago have now been found guilty of hate crimes. These crimes carry a life sentence. That sentence is in addition to the life sentence that they received for murdering Ahmaud Arbery in state court. There were a lot of questions about whether this hate crimes trial would be successful or if it was duplicative, but in fact, a lot of testimony came out at this at this trial that did not come out at this state trial. A lot of people believe strategically the prosecutor in that state case chose not to focus on race, but instead just focus on the act that led to, immediately that led to the death of Ahmaud Arbery, and not what the men's racial biases or motives may have been. It's been an issue since the beginning. There were allegations that didn't come up in either case, that standing over the body of Ahmaud Arbery, Travis McMichael had uttered a racial slur. That allegation had come from one of his co-defendants, and because his co-defendant didn't testify, that could not come in. It would have been hearsay in any other format. So that particular piece of testimony did not come in. But during this case, this hate crimes trial, prosecutors introduced a day of evidence, basically showcasing the hateful, vitriolic language that these men used against African American, the demeaning ways in which they viewed and portrayed African Americans, whether it was in text messages or personal conversations that they had, or social media posts or memes that they passed along. And that was a big focus of this case. Almost